Ladies and gentlemen, this is the 12th and final round.
Right hand, Golovkin steps in and down he goes again. Unbelievable. Mayweather makes a pay. What a rookie mistake. A sensational left hook by De La Hoya.
It's fact. I'm the best. You know what I mean? Sometimes I don't want to believe it myself, but it's the truth. I'm the best.
I'm going to show you how great I am.
From Southern California, this is the Last Round Podcast.
Welcome back to episode 189 of the Last Round Podcast, powered by Manscaped. We appreciate Manscaped, who is our first ever sponsor of this show. We've had a few sponsors reach out over the years after, almost 250, 300 episodes, including weekly episodes and bonus episodes and on-location episodes. And Manscaped is our first partner, so we appreciate that. But this week, before we get to our reviews and previews and news and notes in the sport of boxing, he's back. We were just talking offline before we started recording here. We called him a veteran guest of the show. I don't know if he agrees with it or not, but he's been on the show quite a few times since he moved to the United States, specifically in Las Vegas, Nevada. The Insider's Al Dawson rejoins us here on the Last Round. Thank you again for joining us, Al.
Oh, I appreciate it. I love being called a veteran. I think this is the fourth time I've been on. So whenever you invite me, I'll always come on again and again. I appreciate you guys, and congrats on the sponsor. I need to manscape myself. I've got this beard coming wildly out of control, like a lumberjack beard or something.
Oh, well, Manscaped will definitely help you out. So, you can definitely use our code. We'll give you the code. I think Mike, I have to look at the code. I don't know it off the top of my head. So we're doing this on the fly here with the sponsors. So we definitely appreciate them. But jumping right back into it, fight reviews this past Saturday, the 13th of August, from the Resorts World in Las Vegas, Nevada, on ESPN Plus. The return, the take back, if that's what you want to call it. Teofimo Lopez gets the 7th round TKO over Pedro-Campa, who takes the second loss of his career. Obviously, everybody was very interested to see how Lopez would do. This is his first fight back since losing his titles at 135 to George Kambosos Jr., who subsequently lost his titles to Devin Haney. But there's a rematch coming probably in the next couple months. Lopez, did what he had to do. I think it was a good matchup. The Top Rank matched him up pretty well with Pedro-Campa. This was at 140 pounds, so this was his debut at 140. Al, I know you. I believe when you weren't at any UFC card, but did you catch this fight? And if you did, what did you think about the overall performance of Teofimo Lopez?
I wasn't there because I've just come back from vacation with the family. I would have really liked to go because not only was Teo in the headlining fight, but Xander Zayas was on the undercard as well. And it's just the two guys that are at different points in their career. And I'm really invested in seeing how both continue to do, because it's easy to forget that Teo's still quite young himself. I'm sure he's only like 24 years old or something, and Xander is 19. Easily boxing's best teenager. So I really would have liked to go. And Resorts World is a nice resort. Top Rank, I think, got the first combat sports event at that casino earlier in the year. But I said no, I did catch it at home, and I think like you shouted out the matchmaking at Top Rank. I think that's one of their USPs. The fact that they've been doing this since the 1960s with Bob Arum running the show, but also the matchmaking like with Brad Goodman and those guys. They're just second to none, I think, and you hear it from even promotional rivals like Leonard Ellerby at Mayweather Promotions.
Oh, Matchroom! You never want to say that.
I know. He'll kill me for that. But Leonard Ellerby praises those guys a lot, and when you hear, it's easy when you're hearing in the industry promoters slag each other off, but when you have people that are actually praising, it's with good reason, because they not only know how to. They just that star making process, they've just got it down, and it wasn't just a loss to George Kambosos when Teo lost all of those titles to. It was just a massive fall from grace, considering how he really blew up and he really chased that Vasyl Lomachenko fight, and he won in style. It wasn't like a close fight. It was a good decision win. But then his world just kind of crumbled down with the loss to Kambosos. He didn't look he looked like bad in that fight. And then things he was saying after that fight just made the loss even worse, I thought. So the matchmaking here needed to be on point, and it was. It needed to provide him with a little bit of a test, but not too much, especially as it's a new weight class as well, 5 pounds higher super lightweight. But yeah, he passed the test with relative ease. The jab was, I think he landed almost half of his jabs according to CompuBox data that I saw, and that accuracy just accelerated through the middle rounds toward the end when I think it was a 1-2 punch combo and then a flurry that prompted Tony Weeks to step in. So I like the win, and I think that's what Top Rank would want. It was a confidence boosting win. And then it's just a question of where they go from here. I'm still a little bit disappointed in the fact that he's not at lightweight anymore. I get that people, especially when you're at the age he's at, you're just going to get bigger. You don't turn into like a full size. You are a man at various ages, at early 20s, but you're still growing, especially outwards, as like I've realised, to a good extent. But I think the better fights were always at lightweight. That division's just full of dogs and big names. And, he did fight Lomachenko, but I'd have liked to have seen a few other fights. I don't think that he's going to get those fights at 140. But even though Oscar De La Hoya's ringside, I think that's a non-starter. That fight's just not. I can't see that fight happening with Ryan Garcia. I think they're going to.
Can I ask you your take on that before we continue on? But the like you mentioned, Oscar De La Hoya was ringside for this fight in Vegas, for the Teofimo Lopez fight. He had said like a week prior that he tweeted like the next day after his own event on DAZN that he was going to the Teofimo Lopez fight. And obviously he's trying to get Ryan. I think Ryan also tweeted or put something on social media about, the Teofimo, and, they want to make that fight at 140. Don't you think that, because I think a lot of people are, Ryan has gotten better with each fight, which just adds intrigue to especially a fight with Tank Davis and stuff. But I mean, to us and to a lot of people, Tank Davis would still be the favorite against somebody like Ryan Garcia. Wouldn't you think, at least from a promotional standpoint and a publicity standpoint, that Top Rank, if Oscar De La Hoya is coming to Top Rank and ESPN and saying, hey, Ryan versus Teo, wouldn't you think that Top Rank would kind of go for that? Because I feel like Teo would also be a favorite, and he could get that publicity, that initial publicity off a Ryan win, and beat Tank Davis to it before PBC and Tank Davis go after Ryan. What do you think?
I think everything you've said there is fair, but I think the sticking point with the Tank fight would be the same sticking point here with Oscar. He's so loyal to DAZN that he wants to insert DAZN into these fights, and I just don't think a Teo Ryan Garcia fight is a big enough fight to do a joint whatever DAZN ESPN thing in the US, whereas that was the sticking point with the Tank and Ryan fight.
He's going to need a name though, right? Because whether it's in his contract for the next fight or the fight after, there was talk of MSG, big room, pay-per-view. So he's going to need a name. He's going to need a big dance partner to fill the big room, and for it really to deserve to be on pay-per-view. So maybe Ryan or Josh Taylor, but it's probably too much of a switch around, to fight Jack Catterall and then jump back in, with the winner of that in December. I don't know whether that's feasible.
I think Josh Taylor would be with Teo would be an amazing fight, but I don't think Josh Taylor would be allowed in the US. I'm kind of speculating just because of the association of MTK and how many boxers and people in the British boxing community are apparently on this list of. I think this list is 600 people strong that aren't allowed into the US because of an association of Daniel Kinahan, and supposedly around half of those are involved in British boxing. So I don't think I'd imagine Josh Taylor is potentially on that list, which means he wouldn't be going to MSG. whether Teo would go to the UK. Josh Taylor just isn't a star in the UK, which is a shame because he should be, because he's one of Britain's best boxers, regardless of the Jack Catterall result or performance, rather. He got the result, but or got the result, a result that he didn't deserve. He's still one of the top pound for pound fighters the UK has, and he is an absolute animal. And I spoke to him a couple of times, and he comes across all right, speaking to in interviews and things. But like he's just got that switch on him where he's a dog, like where he went up to who's the manager you guys will know in California?
Rick Meridian.
Yeah, when he went up to Rick Meridian, the guy's got no chill on him at all. Like if you even look at him funny, he'll say something to you, and like there's a part of me that quite likes that. You have to like think, do I have to step on eggshells around him? But then you speak to him, and he seems like a decent person when he's doing like huddles and media interviews. So I would like to see that fight, because I think Josh Taylor's still got a hell of a lot to give. I think he's a very tough boxer. I think he's very strong, willed boxer. The fight he had with Regis Prograis was amazing. I think he's still got fights like that in him. He just needs the right rival, and I think Teo could be that rival, but he's not a big enough star in the UK, sadly, to bring out like Kell Brook with Errol Spence. He's never gonna bring in that sort of audience at like a mid-sized soccer stadium in the UK. And then whether he can get into the US is a different story. I'd love to see that fight. I just can't see it happening. I think that they might do another in-house fight with Teo just to give him another sort of opponent like he just had. I did have a name that I wanted to bring up. It's already escaped my brain, but I think that might be the play. And I don't really know where Ryan Garcia goes. Personally, I'd still love it. I still think the Tank fight is one of the top fights you can make. And if we had that in this year, when we've already been spoiled for like the first 5 months, things would slow down in the summer a little bit, but there's decent rumors that we're going to get Spence and Crawford in November. We've got Joshua and Usyk, which we'll be talking about later. The second half of the year could be amazing, and to have Tank and Ryan Garcia, I just love that fight. Two real good personalities, two very young guys. They attract a different kind of audience, and they both transcend the sport in different ways, represented by Oscar De La Hoya on one side, Floyd Mayweather on the other, Leonard Ellaby on the other, Bernard Hopkins on the other. Put all those guys on the stage, how is it not going to...
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah, how is it not going to be one of the best selling fights of if that can't get 600,000 pay-per-views, I'd be shocked. I'd say that could push what did the first Wilder Fury fight get? I think it could push that a little bit. 750. Yeah, if they did it right, and they would think that's a big boxing show at the very floor. I think they'd go, beyond and try and transcend into the sporting consciousness. With Tank, because I think he resonates with. I think he's had American football players at his fight. I'm sure he's definitely had.
Yeah, he definitely has.
Yeah, he's definitely had rappers and musicians. He resonates.
Basketball, stuff like that.
Yeah. He like different elements of entertainment and sports and music. He resonates with those guys. Ryan Garcia's got a stupid amount of followers on various social media platforms, and I think he's done some modeling as well. Keep on seeing him on the front covers of magazines. Put those two guys together. I still want to see that fight. But the Teo and Ryan Garcia fight just feels a little bit weird. What weight would it be at? If it's at 140, maybe that has another problem for Ryan. What do you guys think?
If Teofimo Lopez fights Josh Taylor, I'll put good money on it. Josh Taylor fights junior and senior. He'll fight senior at the press conference or the weigh-in, and then he'll fight junior on fight night. Because, like you said, he has no chill. So, I was there for the Ramirez fight, and they did the press conference in the weigh-in, and then they nearly had a fight in the elevator. So yeah, I mean that would be good. But I think the name you were probably searching for was Arnold Barboza. I think that would probably be the one that we'll most likely see. The fact that he was ringside, they invite him into the ring, they interview him in the ring. They kind of looks like they're trying to set it up. I just don't know whether Is that big enough for MSG big room?
I mean, is that a guarantee that that they're gonna make his next fight at the big room in MSG, or is it just that Tio and his team and his dad were kind of throwing it out into the universe to see if they could make it happen?
I think, I'm sure Al probably knows better than me, but I think sometimes kind of like that Mayweather effect where they talk about a fight, they see the reaction, and I think from the reaction you could kind of judge like, okay, that's going to fill Fantasy Springs, or that's going to fill like the Staples Center by the reaction. So I think maybe, Tio and his dad, I'm sure, are kind of, think they're the biggest thing in the world, but yeah, they may put the feelers out and be like, okay, it's going to do the big room, and okay, maybe it's going to do the small room. So Lomachenko used to do the small room.
What's the capacity for the big room? Is it 20?
I think it's up 20, like completely full. I think it's 20. Yeah.
I mean, I think that's ambitious. The Resorts World, I'm not sure if this is capacity, but I think there were 3,500 tickets sold, but I don't think there was that much promotion with that event. I think that was mainly just like a boxing event, and if you knew it was going on, you knew it was going on. So I think they did well to sell 3,500 tickets compared to how how little of that event that we heard. So if they were going to do a big room fight, you would imagine they would ramp up the promotion quite a lot. But to go from 3,500 to 20,000 is quite big.
Was it in a tent?
Yeah, if it's at the same place I was at earlier in the year, it's like it's a marquee that's technically outside, just to the side of Resorts World. So that Resorts World don't have a like a room inside the casino or the resort.
Wow.
They just built it.
Yeah, it's crazy because the first time I went there for the Top Rank event, I actually thought it was quite a small venue, and then Canelo had his after party there for the Bivol fight, and I was there during the week, and then there was just this other place that just opens up, and all of a sudden you've got like piano bars and nightclubs and various other restaurants that are all to this other part of the casino. So it's a decent sized resort. They've definitely got 6, 7, 8 restaurants, a few bars, and then obviously a couple of nightclubs. One of them was where Canelo was, and he turned up even after losing to Bivol. But I'm surprised that they don't have a room that can fit 3,500 people when like you say, it looks like a tent.
Right, that's wild. I thought there was like an inside venue, especially because it's so new.
Yeah.
Well, they have some. I can't think who it is, but they have some like resident singers there, so they have a venue for concerts.
Yeah,
maybe it's just not built for boxing.
Yeah, I think Nelly's playing there at some point next month. You remember that?
Yeah, maybe the stage isn't central. You know what I mean? So you can't.
Yeah,
more of like a movie setup, and you're looking down. So maybe that's why they can't do boxing. But that's odd. Yeah,
that's interesting. We talked about, we mentioned Teofimo's father, Teofimo Senior. We might have talked about this in the past within other topics, but the father-son combo in boxing, obviously at least on social media, in the boxing world, Teofimo Senior, when they were announcing Teofimo Lopez as the victor of the fight, he got in front of the camera, right, smack dab in the middle, and just kind of pose, and he was like, I told everybody, and to a lot of I guess fans who were expressing their opinions online, they weren't really appreciative of that. What did you think of that? And what do you think about the father-son combo? I mean, is it going to work long term for any fighter, or is it always good for that actual fighter to step out of, I guess, the family shadow and go with a third-party trainer? Support for the Last Round podcast is brought to you by Manscaped.com. Manscaped is the best in men's below the waist grooming. Their products are precision engineered tools for your family jewels. That's right, your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. 20% off and free. That's right, free worldwide shipping with the code TLR Boxing. That's TLR Boxing. That's the initials of our show, The Last Round. TLR Boxing at manscaped.com. And if my math is correct, that's about 12 million balls that Manscaped has been helping and continues to help as the days and weeks progress forward. And obviously, like we mentioned earlier in the show, if you've been listening, we just struck a partnership with manscaped.com. We definitely appreciate them and their team. Mike, you've tried a couple of their products or one of their products so far. What do you think about it so far?
Yeah, this then is pretty much everything I think they have. I think it's good quality. Use the old shaver on the old downstairs region. No nips and cuts, which is always good.
It worked out, huh? No nips and cuts. So I just got some products as well. So I'm in the process of using them. So once I start using them, I'll give you guys my honest feedback. But we do know a lot of other shows, a lot of other podcasts and other sports shows, and even some just regular people who are not involved in the sporting media landscape or anything like that, who use the Manscaped product, who are big fans. So I have people, friends and family who, once they found out that we were partnered up with Manscaped, when I've been talking to them, they said, "Oh, I use their products." So they're obviously fans, which obviously reinforces our partnership with them. But like Mike said, he's used the shaver, and so far so good. I'm in the process of jumping into their products and using them, and then I'll bring you guys back the feedback. But I'm sure the feedback is going to be extremely positive because we've heard nothing but great things about manscaped.com and their products. So don't forget TLR Boxing at manscaped.com. And now back to the show.
I've got a few things written down because I did feel quite strongly about this, but then I keep going back and forth because, like, the most famous example is surely Floyd Mayweather Jr. and Floyd Mayweather Sr. and Roger Mayweather, and that showed that family can get a fighter. I can't remember what year it was. I remember people were arguing whether Floyd Mayweather deserved to be in the top 50 of all time, and I'm sure that was relatively late in his career. Like boxing writers were legitimately asking whether he does. I think there was even a ranking, and him and Manny Pacquiao were tied at like something crazy, like 48, 49. And then in retirement, suddenly you just see them creeping further and further. And I'd be amazed. Like, for me, I'd really have to sit down and think, but Floyd would definitely be in my top 15, and he would be probably close to top 10. And for so long in his career, he was trained solely by family. And that just shows how it can work. And then another examples, and this is one I'd like as well, Danny Garcia and Angel Garcia, because Angel is probably in a way quite similar to Teo Senior in the sense that out of the father-son combos, it's the fathers who are very extroverted and more, I suppose, on the entertaining side. Like Angel Garcia is quite, he can be quite funny. He's very politically incorrect a lot of the time. I'm seeing an interview with his wife, Danny's mum, and she seemed like a real sweet mum, sweet lady. And then she was just saying, that's just Angel. He's, can't say anything to him. Try saying something to him. But that's just who he is. But the reason I think that works is because Danny's quite quiet. So when they're on the stage together, he's more than happy to have his dad talk all this shit, because that's part of that father-son combo, and it helps generate whatever headlines they're looking to get, because it's just not in Danny's nature to say the sort of things that Angel would say. But with Teo Lopez Sr., the things that I did write down was, it's a bit of a local example, but when I was in London, one of the top coaches in the city, and he's still one of the best there, is Martin Bowers. He's a friend of Lennox Lewis. He did run the Peacock Gym, which is a real community gym. And he trained Oval McKenzie Oval was a Jamaican-born guy, came over to London, and I think under like strange management, he lost maybe like 10 fights in a few years, and then all of a sudden he was trained by Martin, and Martin got him all the way to the British title, Commonwealth title 3 times, the prize fighter tournament that I think Eddie Hearn kind of popularized. I think they had a world title fight, and
Yeah, they did. They did.
Yeah, I think they even deserved to win it, but because
Yeah.
it was like in another country, it was so close that they just gave it to the other guy. So they came back to England with their heads held high. But whenever you see Martin with an athlete at the end of the fight, when the athlete's been successful, the cameras come into the ring. Martin's nowhere to be seen. A lot of people won't even know what Martin Bowers looks like, and it's because he's purposely getting out of the way to put his fighter into the spotlight when they deserve to receive their flowers. So the reason I'm saying that is because when and I've seen the photos in Getty Images, and I've seen the videos that other people have on Twitter. It didn't look like Teo got his flowers. It looked like suddenly, Lopez Senior was inserting himself into the picture to get the flowers that really his son should have had. But again, both guys have gone through, I guess, a lot, and he's probably feeling. I think Teo. I don't want to speculate, but he's definitely gone through a lot. I don't think he took the loss well. He's probably feeling like for how pumped he must have been feeling after beating Lomachenko. All the time throughout the promotion, he was saying he was going to beat him, and people were thinking, how can he? He's like 22 years old. Lomachenko, two-time gold medal winning Olympian, at the time on the top 10 pound for pound list. But Teo went in and did that to him. And then when he came down from the loss from Kambosos, you could see how much the win meant to him on Saturday. I would have liked the cameras to zoom in on that more, but then obviously Lopez Senior got in the way. But maybe Lopez Senior also was going through his own thing, seeing the wins and the loss of his son. I don't know. It's a weird dynamic, father and son. I mentioned Martin Bowers because I like that way of doing things. I think this fighter should be first, even though one of Martin's boxers doesn't train him anymore, Daniel Dubois. He's not very good in front of the camera, but it should always be fighter first. It wasn't on Saturday. I don't think it matters too much, but because Teo gets press anyway, I don't know. It's kind of like a garbled way of me kind of sitting on the fence. But how did you guys see it?
What do you think about, at one point for the biggest fight that they've had, which they won, it turned in the best performance, they had Joe Gamache in the corner. Joe Gamache has obviously helped out a few times, in camp and stuff like that. I just wonder why don't they go back to that, or did they not like having a third person in the corner? Did it take away from Senior, and he didn't like that? But to me, that's the best performance he's ever had. His style looked good. He looked fresh. An amazing game plan. And I think that's what they need. I think they need someone like that. I think they need someone like, maybe a little bit old school, someone else like a different, because he hears that same voice 24/7. He hears it. He's grown up with that voice. He hears it all the time in the corner. There were some points in that where Senior was, in the minute in between rounds, and he was stood there kind of gesturing with the crowd, like he was arguing with the crowd or doing something with the crowd. And I'm thinking, you only get 50 seconds by the time the bell goes, and he walks that down and sits his ass on the stool. 10 seconds is probably gone, and he's there more concerned with stuff like that. So, I don't see it. I don't see him leaving, but I hope they bring somebody else in who can maybe, calm him down and, give him a different outlook on stuff, because I think he needs it. I thought his performance was okay, but I don't know whether his power translates. I don't know whether Campa just has an unbelievable chin, because there was times where he was catching him clean and Campa wasn't moving. And we don't know Campa, though, so I don't know does he have an iron jaw or something like that, because he's not someone that we regularly see. But it'd be interesting to see, when he fights somebody else at 140, has that power moved up, because he started off slowly built his confidence, and you saw the old Teofimo, his hands were dropping and he was kind of moving like that and coming in from weird angles, which I kind of enjoyed to watch. But yeah, there are still a few things which kind of leave me with, concern, because, 140 there's some good, strong fighters in that division. And, he does have all the potential, because we've seen it once at 135. And I think he is big enough for 140. I just don't know whether he has the right people in his corner.
I think with that dynamic, it might come down to who is boss. I always got the impression Floyd Jr. was the boss.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd imagine, even though he's quite quiet, I imagine Danny Garcia is still the boss, in that relationship. Taking away, talking about trainer-pupil relationship rather than father-son. I'm sure these guys are professional enough to separate the biological relationship from the coaching one. But I don't know Tio or his dad well enough to kind of even guess. But yeah, I think it might come down to who is the boss in the if the father is the boss, I don't think that would work, because then that they can easily overrule who else they bring into the training setup. Okay, another good example, I guess, is Devin Haney and Bill Haney. Like Devin's quite quick to always say that Bill is his head coach, but I get the impression Devin's quite open to bringing in. Who did he bring in? The UK
Ben Davidson.
Yeah. And then that's a good working relationship. Devin's supremely skilled at 135, went over to Australia, and then, eventually had his dad with him. I think he turned up with like maybe 12 hours to spare because of his own visa issues going from America to Australia. But that's another good example of how the father-son relationship can work well in the sport. But I think Bill Haney's probably a natural teacher in a way. I spoke to Bill in May at the Top Rank gym, and he's got another child. I think it's a daughter. I think she's around 13, but I got the impression she's pretty shit hot at tennis. So it's like, Bill. I kind of still want to write the story, but I'm kind of thinking Bill might be like a second coming of Richard Williams, where you've got like one really amazing child prodigy in Venus Williams, but then up his hand he's also got the younger child who's also as good, but which was Serena for Richard Williams, but in Bill's case they're two different sports. But yeah, I'd still like to write that profile on Bill.
I've got two questions for you both. What did you think about the fact that Teofimo Lopez said that he only did 2 weeks of sparring, and on that performance where he's come back, he should be fully fit and healthy? Would that Teofimo Lopez on that performance beat Kambosos?
Go ahead, Al. I'll let you go first.
They both really good questions. The first one, to borrow an example from MMA and UFC, but Max Holloway, I don't think does any sparring. He still rolls, I think, but he doesn't do any like headshots or striking in camp. And I'm guessing he doesn't really need to anymore because he's in like mid-30s. He's done it all. One of the best featherweights, but prior to him losing to Volkanovski in the third fight in July, where Volkanovski looks so good, I just put him in the number one spot pound for pound. But he was still doing. It was like he didn't need to. He was always. I think he was saying for 2 years. I don't think he'd been sparring, and it was like he didn't need to. You get to a point where maybe, is it necessary? One, if you've already done it, and you've got to the point where you can replicate various other things in camp. But two, more importantly, with CTE, brain trauma, the how many boxers have we seen throughout history who just sound completely different post-fight than they in retirement than they did when they were competing? And anything you can do to reduce that is better, because the things that give you brain trauma aren't the fights. They're the continual blows that you take in sparring. And in boxing, you take so many of them, way more than you do in MMA. And I think it's why we see more, tragedies and fatalities in boxing. We rarely see. I haven't seen any or written about any in MMA. I've written about 2 in boxing in the last 2 months alone, and that's too many. So anything you can do to reduce the amount of brain trauma you take, I think, is good. But whether or not it makes a difference in a fight, I really don't know. I'd love to see more studies on it, but I think it's interesting that the athletes these days are doing it, and it's not just Teo. Like I say, it's Max Holloway as well in UFC. What do you think, Dan?
The second question.
Second question was if
Kambosos, with that performance, yeah.
I don't know, because I think he would. Well, he definitely would have performed better. at the very minimum, because the things that I liked that Tio was doing was, he was landing the jab a lot. He was landing it a lot in every single round, and the accuracy. It wasn't that he was landing it; it was that it was very accurate, and it was. I think it was. I can't remember which eye it was, but Campa's eye was getting damaged around the fifth, and he just kept targeting it. So it's like it wasn't just headshots; it was very, specific areas that he was looking at, not just with the jab, but also I think the left hook got there as well. So probably wouldn't have been able to knock out Kambosos. Definitely would have given himself a better showing. I would have tipped that Tio to have a far closer result on the scorecards than he did prior. So yeah, he's definitely improved from that fight, but it wasn't anywhere. There's still levels below what we saw against Lomachenko.
And in regards to the 2 weeks sparring, at least what Tio said, I believe it, and I agree with Al in terms of in terms of reducing, from, if you look at it from a medical perspective, to reduce the blows to the head and stuff like that. I definitely agree with that. But it also could be like a mind game that Teofimo Lopez by saying that, throwing it out there like, oh, I only sparred 2 weeks for this guy or something, and then the opponent Campa's like, wait a minute, what are you trying to say, that you're overlooking me, that I suck, something. It could be a mind game. So I think it also has to do with that, because when Teofimo Lopez and his dad Tio Senior are in the right, good state of mind, and everything's going good, like, especially after Lomachenko win, you can obviously see that they're full of confidence. You can see that this past Saturday night, Lopez in the ring, there was at one point he went to the corner and he was trying to do the ollie where he puts his hands on the ropes and he tries to dodge, and then I believe Tony Weeks was the referee. Tony Weeks told him, he's like, hey, get out of there, like he got him out of there before he did too much of it. And then, like Mike was saying, dropping his hands, kind of moving his head, and that obviously showed you that he's confident. He wasn't really doing that. I don't believe he did that at all with Kambosos, because he knew that he was in a fight. But also, you got to take into account, that his mental state for the Kambosos fight and his mental state for this one are completely opposites. Completely opposites positions on the spectrum. I think addressing the Kambosos question that you had, Mike, that I think that Teofimo Lopez obviously did improve, but it has a lot to do with his mental state. When he lost to Kambosos, he was going through issues with the mother of his child, and obviously that didn't work out. They got divorced, but he had a child with her, and then there were some other issues, internally with him, and then he got, so that obviously affected him. I don't know if he came out and admitted it or not. I'm sure he did, but and then now he's almost X amount of months later, or what have you, or what, maybe a year, I don't even know now. He's had time to kind of refocus and kind of go through the peaks and valleys of his battle and come back and get a win, get back into the win column in a new division, and against somebody like Campa. So, yeah, you might disagree with me, Mike, but I think that with that performance, I think he beats Kambosos because of his mental state. Because of his mental state. I believe that
you were right. You were right on one part of it. I do disagree with you.
I'm telling you, the mental state thing is a very important thing. I mean, boxing is a very mental game. There's a lot of physicality to it, but look at somebody like we've been talking about Floyd a couple times during this podcast. Look at somebody like Floyd throughout his career. Every fight he had, obviously during his pretty boy days, he was a little bit more aggressive, but during like the Money Mayweather phase, he was a little bit more defensive, but he fought every person pretty much the same way. He fought like Manny Pacquiao and Victor Ortiz and those guys the same way. Like, you never really saw him showboat too much. He did it in spurts, but he was always, he's very dedicated. He doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke, he doesn't do any of that. Boxing was his life, just training all the time. And I think Lopez needs to get into that zone. Obviously he's confident, and he does the backflips, and he tries to do the ollie mannerisms and stuff like he did against Campa. But It has a lot to do with his mental state. His mental state on Saturday was the highest it's been since his loss to Cambosis. And I think if they fought again, whether he can get back down to 135 or not, especially at 135, with Teo's mental state at a high level like that and the confidence that he had as he was showing on Saturday, I think he beats Cambosis easy. I really do. I know you disagree with me, Mike, but
I'm just going on that performance. I mean, it's like Al mentioned, is like if he was in there, in that state of mind against George Cambosis, who's a different league to Campa, we probably would have seen someone a little bit sharper, a little bit more on the edge, because it's a bigger fight. So I was kind of just going off that kind of performance. But to touch on the sparring issue, I think I don't know, like I think Ingle's gym, had a good idea about, just doing a lot of body sparring and really doing it, not much or any, head sparring, with headgear on, because of the amount of, damage you're taking, to the brain. Repeated punches, obviously, it's no good. And, obviously develops to like CTE, and you can go and buy, Trish Dixon's book, Damaged, and, read about all the studies that he's done. So I think, doing, just body sparring, because you do need that, the sharpness to get your range and stuff like that. So, you don't necessarily need to be, punching in the head to do that, especially when, most boxers have been doing it from when they were 7 years old, 8 years old. So, just to develop that sharpness and the range is probably really all they need in the last few weeks of camp.
Yeah,
the mental health stuff we can leave until we reach Brona. I wanted to bring something up for that, but
yeah, we'll jump to that. We'll start with going to fight previews this upcoming Saturday from the Pachanga Arena in San Diego, California, on ESPN and the Plus, ESPN Plus. Another top-ranked card on ESPN, Emmanuel Navarrete, 35-1, goes up against Eduardo Baez, 21-2. This is for the WBO featherweight world title. Al, what do you think about Navarrete? Do you think he's the best featherweight in the world at the moment?
I mean, yeah, he's certainly up there. I didn't realize that was on Saturday. Jesus.
Yeah. I'm going to be there, Al. I'm going to be there.
Yeah, Mike's going to be there. It just creeps up on you, doesn't it, Al?
Yeah. I mean, it's great for Top Rank to go back to back. But yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to look through his box rec right now.
Yeah, and San Diego's like an untapped market. I mean, obviously, Matchroom was there with the Chocolatito Gonzalez fight a couple months back, which we were at.
And UFC were just there on Saturday. So the Pachanga Arenas had back, they're literally going from Saturday to Saturday, big UFC fight night event to a Top Rank show.
I heard in a rumor, which it's not even a rumor, it's true. San Manuel, they're starting doing boxing events, and obviously they bought the Palms, so they've been offering local promoters money to put cards on at San Manuel in California and the Palms in Las Vegas.
So San Manuel, Al, if you're not aware of it, San Manuel is a casino out here in California. It's in San Bernardino County, like against the mountains, pretty much. And it's like a tribal land out here in California. And Mike, do they have like an event center to put on fights, or are they building something?
No, I believe they already have something there. I know that they used to do them a while ago, but they've just got a new guy that's running the events coordinator, and because also they have the Palms, they've been reaching out to local promoters to see who would be willing to do that. And I know the person they've offered it to in California, but they don't want to cover both. Right. So this person's going to be covering the California side, and then they're looking for somebody else to do the Las Vegas one.
Yeah, that's definitely interesting. Going back to the WBO featherweight title this Saturday on Top Rank on ESPN, Emmanuel Navarrete. Al, do you think Navarrete is the best featherweight in the world? Obviously Shakur Stevenson, and he's moved up and stuff like that. So he's at one point he was, but do you think now that Shakur's moved up and some other guys have moved up, do you think Navarrete is the big dog in that weight division?
I think there's like clusters of them, but they're all like kind of different levels. I don't think the Brick guys, Lee Wood and Josh Warrington, can challenge for that like number one spot. And then it's kind of the Americans, Gary Russell, inactive, Brandon Figueroa recently lost. Yeah, no, I'm not going to be able to pronounce it as beautifully as you, Dan. Navarrete and Ray Vargas. It's kind of between those two guys.
My dream, and I've said this before, and boxing gods better be listening and maybe give me this. Navarrete Lara. Oh my God.
Oh, Mauricio Lara.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah. And Mauricio Lara kind of came out of nowhere because showing off his power on those, I believe he's been fighting on Matchroom cards, right? I mean, I think Lara's in that position right now where he's like, oh, he's too dangerous, and it's like it's not worth the financial risk for a lot of these, world champions in the division, because he's been knocking these guys out, and it's like I don't blame these guys. It's in terms of looking at him and saying, oh man, like you're gonna put me against this guy. He's been knocking everybody out, like a Virgil Ortiz.
Give me a trilogy of those two. That'd be unbelievable.
Yeah, no, that'd be cool. I think Lara's definitely making some noise and going, going through that division. He's trying. Eddie Hearn's definitely going to try to get him a title shot. Also, this upcoming weekend from the Seminole Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Hollywood, Florida, not California, Florida. It's showtime once again. Not Adrian Broner. I'm sorry. We wrote this before. The announcement. I believe it was earlier today, or maybe sometime this morning. So Adrian Broner, for anybody who's not aware, Adrian Broner was originally supposed to fight on this card in the main event against Omar Figueroa Jr. This was for the WBC Silver Super Lightweight title. Adrian Broner unfortunately had
the stand-in is going to be Lipinets.
Right. Yeah. That's what I was getting to. So Broner, unfortunately, had to withdraw. According to his post on social media, he's dealing with some mental health issues. If I don't know exactly what he put, but if you guys want to read it, I think he did post it on his social handles or Instagram or something like that. So go check it out. So he's out. He got out of that fight. And Sergey Lipinets was announced by PBC and Swanson Communications sometime today as the replacement opponent. So it's Lipinets versus Figueroa Jr. for the WBC Silver Super Lightweight title. It's still good that they try to save the card. Because when fighters, they're this close to an event and they've been training, dieting, all that stuff, paying their team members, to be around and train for 6 to 8 weeks or something like that. It's good that, there's backup opponents. Obviously we see that in boxing. But Al, what do you think about this new matchup, Lipinets against Figueroa Jr. now that Broner's out?
Yeah, I mean, I don't hate it because like the amount of how limited you would be trying to find an opponent with, when the fight is literally on Saturday. And Lipinets is one of those guys who's like, for years, he's just had the praise of various people in the industry. I think Joe Goosen, he's like always talks about how impressive Lipinets is. And he's just been in, I think I'm amazed that he's had less than, I think, 20 fights, considering he's been in with, he lost to Mikey Garcia, he's beat Lamont Peterson, and then most recently he's lost to Duran Ennis. But he's one of he's proving himself to be, and again, proving himself to be this week, a guy that you can rely on to come in and put in a good fight, as I guess the opponent. But I mean, I really wouldn't have known what to expect had the opponent still been Broner, because Broner's at the stage in his career where, like, I don't want to say it's like a case of Conor McGregor where your best success came when you would, like one of your talks about USPs earlier in the show, or maybe it was when we're speaking offline, but like Broner, for me, one of Broner and Conor McGregor's USPs is the fact that they were expert weight cutters. So Conor shouldn't be able to make featherweight, but he did again and again and again and again. Broner shouldn't have made whatever weight classes he was a 3-weight champion. He shouldn't have been making weight in that first weight class he won a championship in, but he was just an expert weight cutter where when it came to fight night, both Broner and McGregor were just naturally the bigger man, and they had that is an advantage in a fight, especially in the lighter weight classes, when even a matter of pounds can have such a impact. But since then, there's like two stages in Broner's career. The second half is just completely, I think, more unpredictable in the ring. So I wouldn't. And Omar Figueroa was chasing, definitely chasing a win after I think it's 2 successive losses. So I wouldn't have known what to make of it in that fight. And yeah, but with this one, I don't think it's. I don't know. I don't really want to criticize too many fights before they've even happened because, it can really surprise you, and it's always better, I think, to criticize after the fight, after the event, when you can say I didn't like this, but the pacing was slow and the main event shouldn't have been a main event. This doesn't strike me as a strong main event.
What do you think, Mike?
I was really looking forward to the Broner-Omar Figueroa fight. Broner's just amazing, isn't he, during fight week himself? And then normally, over the last few fights, he's good during fight week, but then when he actually gets to the fight, he doesn't really throw a lot, just kind of wants to survive, loses on points, gets his payday, disappears. When he runs out of money, he comes back. But this is a good stand-in. Lipinets is normally good to watch. He kind of, in his last few fights, kind of takes like a bit of a beating. He's a real gladiator, kind of a gatekeeper sort of style now. I was surprised as well. I just kind of looked after Al said, yeah, it's surprising he's had less than, 20 fights because he seems like he's been around forever.
Yeah.
But it's kind of one of the things that's kind of been going around on Twitter, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, is like, what more can they do for mental health? It seems like now, you've got Broner spoke about it, Omar Figueroa spoke about it, Tyson Fury, Amo Williams, the amount of fighters that, have struggled with, mental health, and it just tends to be something that's in every walk of life now, not just fighters, really. We read about it all the time, and the suicide rates is unbelievable, in the world. And just maybe there's something that we need to look at as well. Maybe a lot of fighters need to stay off social media, because I think that's one of the big things that people kind of really struggle with is reading those negative comments about themselves. And I just hope that we don't see more and more fighters kind of struggling with it because they're put in that limelight, and we see more type of Adrian Broner, Teofimo Lopez type things where, either people perform badly because of mental health or they pull out on fight week due to mental health.
Right. Yeah. And then, also there's, I don't know, it's not official yet, but I think WBC ordered, or there's some information about reports about Leo Santa Cruz and Lee Wood possibly fighting. I guess there might be a deal on the horizon between those two. They're also at featherweight 126. So those are other, Al mentioned Lee Wood earlier, but we can't forget about Leo Santa Cruz, even though we haven't seen him since his knockout loss to Tank Davis. Leo Santa Cruz is still there, and over his career, he's had some pretty entertaining fights, Abner Mares, all that stuff, over his career. And I mean, the one thing with Leo Santa Cruz, he throws over like 1,000 punches of a fight. So, imagine him, fighting Lee Wood, beats Lee Wood, and then, Top Rank and PBC or Al Heyman can make a fight between Leo Santa Cruz and Navarrete, or even Ray Vargas or something like that. All Mexican fight, maybe in Southern California or even Texas. I think that'd be great. So, can't forget about Leo Santa Cruz. He's still there. He manages to pop up.
A guy I work with just saw him the other day at a house party. He texted me. He's like, "Hey, I saw this guy called Lewis that's from Los Angeles, and he said he's a world champion." And I was like, "Well, where were you?" He's like, "Oh, I was in Corona." I was like, took a picture of Leo Santa Cruz off Google, and I was like, "Do you mean this guy?" He's like, "Yeah, that's him. That's him." I know that he owns the house in Corona as well as Montebello. So I just assumed it would probably be Leo Santa Cruz, and it was.
That's funny. Yeah, they pop up. California. I mean, Al's getting used to the west coast of Vegas and Southern California, LA area. They're out and about. If you just drive through or walk through, you'll manage to pop into somebody. All right, this is probably everybody's been waiting for the preview, the rematch. Alexander Usyk, 19-0, goes up against Anthony Joshua, 24-2, for the IBF, WBA, WBO, and IBF heavyweight titles. All right, Al. What do you think? Are we talking about same result here as the first fight, or is a change in trainer with Robert Garcia and Anthony Joshua's side enough to get him the win?
I mean, I was there in London for the first fight, and I remember in the fight week, Usyk kept on dressing up like the Joker, in the build up, but he wasn't there to make people laugh on the night. He was there to, I felt like he just hustled people. He definitely hustled me. It was like he was a pool shark from decades ago. That stereotype, because yeah, I'm almost ashamed to admit it, considering how the fight went. But I actually like Joshua going into that fight purely because my reasoning, flawed as it is looking back, at heavyweight only, prior to fighting Joshua, Usyk's performances at the weight, they were so. Witherspoon and Chisora, there were levels below the standards he'd set at cruiserweight, where he just set that division ablaze, and he arguably won up to Holyfield as the best cruiserweight of all time. But yeah, like Usyk just he was just so convincing in Joshua, and it was arguably probably the performance of his lifetime when the first third of the fight and the final third, he was just unbelievably good, and it was in enemy terrain, like he's done pretty much all his career, in front of 80,000 Brits, and it really was an unforgettable night being there, because we've moved on so much, but putting ourselves back in that mindset of lockdown, when that event was held, it wasn't that long after London came out of lockdown, and to have 80,000 people there, and the weather, Mike will know, but like we talk about the weather all the time, because in England it's fickle and can be quite depressing. Moving in California and Nevada, we've all done the right thing, waking up and the sun shining a lot of the time. But the weather was great. Everyone had just come out of lockdown. It was a real feel-good atmosphere there. The card was pretty forgettable. I remember a monster KO from Callum Smith, but the entrances, the atmosphere coming out of those lockdowns, full house, and Usyk just put on. He was so good at heavyweight, and when I revisit that, how can I really go for revenge rather than repeat performance? I'm not sure switching up any trainer, and you could put in any trainer there, because I don't want it to be like a thing against Robert Garcia. I think he's a beast of a trainer. He's trained so many champions, and I think he's a good ambassador for the sport as well. But you could, I think you could switch any trainer; it won't make a difference. Usyk, the one thing, and I don't think it's it's been, he's spoken about it a little bit, but not too much. But the one thing that I think could maybe play on the result is the fact that Ukraine is still at war with trying to fend off Russian aggression. He's been there in Ukraine, and he gave an interview to Donald McRae, I think in the Guardian. Can't remember when it was, but he was pretty open. Donald's really good at getting fighters to open up. Quite an empathetic individual, and he was just talking about I'm not sure if he's religious, but his words were, I'm sure that he was praying to God that he didn't have to kill anyone, and he was praying to God he didn't have to pull the trigger on whatever weapons he was holding, and he was praying to God that nobody would be pulling the trigger on him. And how is that going to play on his mentality this week at all, or on the fight night? Whether I don't know how safe his family is, don't know how safe his friends are, but the Ukraine response to Russian invasion was such a prominent part of the news agenda when Russia first invaded in February 24th. And it was still quite prominent for about a month and a half. We saw quite a few people from combat sports go back there. Usyk was one, Lomachenko was another. Amosov, a Bellator MMA champion, went back. I think one kickboxer has even died. You might have to fact check me, Mike. I know you've got quick Google fingers there. I'm sure a kickboxer died. But if I'll have to look that up after the show, and if that's wrong, I take that back immediately. But yeah, we saw combat athletes go back, and though the news agendas moved on to other things like the J6 committee and Trump whatever documents he had at Mar-a-Lago, that was still there, and the whatever people in Ukraine saw for the first 6 weeks of that war is still going on now. It's just not being reported on as much. So that's the one thing that I think, maybe that could play on his mind. But considering how good Usyk's been throughout his entire career cruiserweight, considering how good he was specifically against Joshua, I'm not really sure what tangibles Joshua could have that would really offset what Usyk did in the first third of that fight and the third of that fight, because there was clearly a level of talent between them. And if Joshua was going to be more aggressive, and I don't think he's got that in him, but maybe that's why he went with Robert Garcia to try and coach that back, the pre-Klitschko aggression. But I don't know. I think the knockdown he suffered against Klitschko and subsequent knockdowns he suffered against Ruiz. Other times he's probably been a bit timid around his whiskers and the strength of his beard and his general recuperation abilities. I just think he's a completely different boxer. If he was going to try and change, it's probably going to be a mistake, because Usyk almost knocked him out as well. In like the later rounds, it could have, potentially could have been a finish. It didn't. Even without that finish, it was still an incredible performance from Usyk. But if he got that, Jesus, it would have been one of the best modern day performances that we've seen in boxing. It's a repeat performance for me. I think I can't make the same mistake twice and go for Joshua when all logic for me points towards Usyk. Unless you two are now going to say, well, actually.
Well, I wanted to ask your take, because you mentioned, obviously we mentioned how he changed trainers with Robert Garcia, and I've seen a couple photos of AJ in the last couple of days, maybe even today. I don't know if it was taken today or not, but he's obviously lost a lot of weight and he looks a lot slimmer. So generally, I mean, us as observers of the sport and all these fights that we watch, when you see a fighter do that, that means that they probably want to focus more on speed, throw a little bit more punches, be a little bit more agile, instead of, because obviously they're in the heavyweight division. AJ's always been a big muscle, Adonis looking type of fighter. So he lost maybe some of that muscle to be able to gain that speed against somebody like Usyk, because Usyk's obviously such a technical fighter, and with great footwork and all that. So do you think that is going to play a factor, and you think AJ will utilize it, or do you think that Usyk will just neutralize his arsenal just like last time?
I think Usyk's too clever, for one. I'd like to see what they both look like on the actual weigh-in, because if Usyk's coming in heavier, then maybe he could just go for the finish. But I think Usyk's just got that ring intelligence and IQ that just sets different boxers apart. Like, we've mentioned Floyd repeatedly, but Floyd had that in abundance. The way he could look like he was losing the fight to Maidana in the first fight, but then adjust and end up getting a decision. He did that multiple times in his career, where he could figure people out on the night. And I think Usyk's got the same thing in him, where he can read and respond accordingly. On the other side, I don't think Joshua has that. I think Joshua's more of an athlete, and a bit of a weird comparison, but I think he's more like Deontay Wilder in that sense. They both came to boxing late. They could have probably done different sports as well and found, relative success there as well. But, we're lucky that they both chose boxing. But with that, I think with someone like Usyk, who's had far more it's weird to say this because Joshua is a gold medalist himself, but Usyk's amateur pedigree is better than Joshua's, and Usyk's amateur style was better than Joshua's. Joshua didn't really deserve the gold medal. Sorry, Britain, he didn't. He should have probably lost in the very first round. I can't remember who it was to, but I remember watching it with my dad saying, this guy just won the silver medal at the World Amateur Championships the year before. He's probably going to be, blowing up as a pro straight after these games in London. And I remember watching the very first round with my dad. My dad's comment after the fight was just like, was that it? And I think he even, I'm not sure, there was another fight in the Olympics Joshua didn't deserve to win. It might have even been the final. I think it was even against
was that Italian dude?
Camarelli, yeah, and the first round must have been Pavon, the Cuban. Whereas Usyk, he deserved his, or more deserving was of the achievements he had as an amateur. And then resume, I think he's got the better. Joshua's resume is made out to be more than it is, and I think some people then kind of respond to Eddie Hearn's comments and kind of like play it down. It's still a good resume, but Usyk's. I just can't pick Joshua here, regardless of the things that have changed, whether it's the weight or different strategy, different trainer. I don't think any of it's going to matter. I think the one thing we can praise Joshua here for is the fact that he's got balls the size of beach balls. You know, this guy he was completely embarrassed in New York to Ruiz, and he went straight back and he got the immediate rematch and he won. Regardless of the result, if you're going straight back into a loss where you've been humiliated, you deserve great respect, because one thing, you're going into the ring anyway, it's a hell of a thing to do, but to do so after you've just been completely like embarrassed when you've been set up by Sky Sports and Matchroom as the Roger Federer of boxing is what they were trying to go for, like a Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan type face of the sport. And, you just you just defeated 4 knockdowns to a guy who has man boobs. The contrast between Ruiz and Joshua on that night couldn't have been like wider. And you wouldn't have picked, if you didn't know boxing and you were just picking who's the champion, you would never have picked Ruiz. And Ruiz just completely battered him. But then, steps in and gets the rematch. And regardless of the shape that Ruiz came in the rematch, Joshua deserved great respect for taking on the rematch. And he's done it again. Just a completely different loss this time. He wasn't knocked out to Usyk. He was, what's that, Mike?
Oh, no, I was looking at Danny. I always do that just to say, like, hey, I'll talk next.
Oh, right, okay.
We don't talk over each other.
He does that. He does that.
I was just going to say, so you don't believe that Usyk's just an average southpaw then?
Oh, mate, if this is a reference to some of the things that some guys like Johnny Nelson are saying, and I get that there are company men in various broadcast media companies, but I can't believe that guy's paid for his opinions when these aren't opinions. It's complete bullshit. You can't say stuff that's just nonsense. He's not an average southpaw. He's one of the best boxers pound for pound right now, and he's going to go down regardless of whatever he does in the rest of his career as at minimum the number 2 cruiserweight of all time. At minimum,
right? Probably
the number 1. And then if he beats Joshua again, Jesus, maybe he lures Tyson Fury into the ring. That's a hell of a contest. That's probably that's literally the only person who could probably challenge Tyson Fury right now. If you beat him and then beat Wilder, I know this is a lot of what ifs, but he's just cleaned out heavyweight.
Right.
And if he's cleaned out heavyweight and he's cleaned out cruiserweight, we've got to then be talking about a modern day. I mean, he's already a modern day great, but we've got to be talking about where does he rank it in terms of the pantheon of other great boxers in the past.
Just think how big he would be if he was British or American.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
he'd be significantly more popular and bigger than he is if he was from the UK or if he was from America. And he's funny. And we don't half the time we don't even really know what he's saying, but he's a comic genius. His comic timing, and like when he pops up on the camera and stuff like that behind Bob Arum, it's just miraculous. And then, like you touched on about the experience and the IQ that he has, I posted this today on our Twitter. Joshua started boxing in 2007. Usyk won a bronze medal at the 2006 European Championships. That's a year before Joshua even took up the gloves. 2008, Usyk won 2 gold medals and 1 silver at the European and World Championships. So that just goes on to say, 335 wins and 15 losses as an amateur. And then you've got Joshua's probably had, 40 fights combined, amateur and pro, around there, 40, 50 fights. I haven't got his record up at the minute, but I would assume something like that. So to me, there's just levels to this game. And like I picked Usyk the first time because to me, Joshua's, like you touched on, he's an athlete that is a boxer. He's just man-made. Like when he goes to the corner, like when he's losing fights and he's asking the coach, like, hey, what should I do now? What do you think he's going to do? That just shows his lack of self-confidence and boxing IQ. You know, like I'm sure he's like 1, 2, okay, 3. Whereas like Usyk, you never know what's going to come because he's just a boxing genius. You know, he just does. He'll start with the hook. He'll lead with the hook. He's got good feet. It's kind of like a huge dinosaur trying to catch a small dinosaur. You know, that's what Usyk and like Joshua's like, in my opinion. And I think this time Usyk either, you know, peppers him again and wins 12 rounds, or, you know, some people have said he's put some size on. I know Rob Tebbett posted today that he has put a little bit of size on, but not the 12 kilos that some people were reporting. So Usyk may even stop him. You know, Joshua has a chance if he catches him, but he's got to catch him. And then I know a lot of people are kind of saying that, oh, he just needs to pressurize him, you know, go old AJ, you know, go out on your shield. How many people have tried that? How many people have said this same thing, like, oh, you know, just pressurize him. And in my opinion, might make it worse because there's going to be more openings for AJ to get hit because he's throwing. And Usyk is significantly faster and is a good counterpuncher. He can do everything. So it may be an early night for AJ if he decides to do that.
That might be his only chance to win.
Oh, it is, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like what you were saying about him taking up boxing the year after Usyk had already won these things as an amateur. Like, again, like giving Joshua his flowers, he's overachieved in boxing.
Yeah. Very impressive. I guess I'll go. I mean, it seems like both of you are picking Usyk. I guess it's the dramatic boxing fan in me. I'm going AJ. I think AJ pulls it off. I'm going for it, man. I'm going for it. I you know, like you said, like Al said a couple minutes ago, AJ has balls the size of beach balls. And we acknowledge that. And, you know, and especially in the boxing world today, we complain about not seeing certain fights and this and that. But AJ, you know, shows like, oh no, I'll go right back in there and get my belts back from Ruiz or this or that. You know, he's fought a lot of names in the heavyweight division. So I think that, like I said, the drama side of me, I'm going AJ. I think AJ wins. I don't want to go as far as say as he knocks him out, but I think just to keep it interesting here, I'm going AJ in the rematch here.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if he's going to win, I think the only way he can win is to knock him out.
Yeah.
And
you're
right. Yeah.
I think, the only way, obviously, to do that is just to, and it would be such a ballsy strategy. And even if he lost, he could end up in a similar position as what Klitschko found himself in when he lost to Joshua, where Klitschko came out of that fight with a hell of a lot of like credibility and praise, like more so than he did losing to Tyson Fury, and a lot of the time, probably even more than a lot of it, even his wins, just because of the way he tried to stick it to Joshua, and he almost did it as well. You know, if that was Klitschko from I don't know, even a year before, granted he couldn't pull the trigger against Fury. I think that was more down to what Fury was doing than to hit himself. But yeah, if that was a 1 year younger Klitschko, probably could have beaten Joshua. If Joshua was gonna do that, and it was either a case of KO or be KO'd, and he was going to get a third round result either way, I would give him again. I would credit the size of his balls.
Yeah, absolutely.
Usyk has a chin as well, because if you remember, was it the Gassiev fight where he took that clean shot straight on the whiskers, and everyone used to go on about, I think it was Sam Jones and stuff. Didn't they spar like Gassiev with Joe Joyce, and they were talking about how big a puncher he is, and Usyk took one like right on the whiskers and just walked straight through it. So that's another thing that kind of goes against AJ, is he's not really a one-punch knockout artist like Wilder. It's more he catches you and then he follows up with combinations. And I just don't know whether that's good enough to fight someone like Usyk. And being a Brit, I want him to win. You know, I want to see that fight between AJ and Tyson Fury would be absolutely enormous. As Eddie Hearn says, the biggest fight ever. So, I mean, I would like it just for that, but I don't see it. And, you know, like you said, Anthony Joshua has done remarkably, in my opinion, for what talent he has and kind of like how he's just kind of mastered the basics, you know, the 1, 2, 3 to get where he's got. He's beaten like Pulev, Povetkin, you know, names like that. So
Dillian White.
Yeah, Dillian White. That's another fight as well. So, yeah, he's done really, really well. So just in case people jump on me and like, you know, think that I hate the guy or something like that because I'm picking Usyk, but I just think he's too clever, too good, too well-rounded. got a good chin, and I think he's just too much for AJ again. And I think AJ might play straight into his hands if he goes out there and tries to walk him down. But like Al said, that really is his own way of winning because he's not going to outbox him over 12 rounds. And if I was him, I would just be like one of those days where you're like, you know what, like I'm going to go out on my shield and just be like, I'm either going to win in dramatic fashion or I'm going to get knocked out. And I think he just has to convince himself mentally of that, because when you watch him in fights, when he gets pressurized, he's a bully fighter. He really is a bully fighter, because when he gets pressured, he has a nervous smile. And then in that like second fight against Ruiz, there was one of the late rounds where Ruiz either catches him or nearly catches him. Joshua kind of starts smiling, and it's when he gets nervous, it tends to be, he has that, and he kind of shows it on his face. He doesn't really hide it. And I just think it's going to be Usyk's night again, unfortunately. And what time is it here for us? What time is the fight?
I think the ring walks are 10:30 in British time, so I think that's 2:30 for us on the West Coast.
Yeah, that's usually how it works when it's big fights over there. It's about between 2 and 3 o'clock Pacific time over here.
I'll also would like to say I don't like that it's in Saudi Arabia. I maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think this is about like a Saudi Arabian legacy for combat sports. I think Abu Dhabi is, Mike's doing the finger sign with the money sign. But yeah. I think Abu Dhabi is actually trying to do a legacy with combat sports. They've got jiu-jitsu tournaments, and I'm not that big on UAE culture, so I might be getting the terminology wrong. But the ruler or one of the local rulers in Abu Dhabi, I think they were a real big jiu-jitsu fan, 10 years ago or 20 years ago. So they started integrating it into the school curriculum. So a lot of young, Emiratis and, people from Abu Dhabi, they just learn it in school and they grow like a passion for it. So that's why there's the World Jiu-Jitsu Championships is always at Abu Dhabi. There's even a jiu-jitsu arena there that's decent size, and it holds cards for the UAE Warriors, an MMA event. And obviously UFC went there for Fight Island. There's a bit of a combat sports culture there. I don't really see what the culture is for combat sports in Saudi Arabia. And I didn't go to the Joshua Ruiz rematch, but I did speak to various reporters who were there, and they just said it was dead. There was nothing to do on the fight week. And they were even, usually there's beheadings on a Friday, but there wasn't on that one fight week. That it was quite a rarity, apparently, that there wasn't a public beheading on the Friday. It's kind of, I did write an article for that first fight about the sports washing element, did speak to human rights organizers. I don't really think that sports washing element's gone away. What Saudi Arabia is doing with like Live Golf, for instance, they're kind of like buying up, various sports, and that's kind of arguably what they've done here. I don't think it would like be as dramatic if there was like a culture there for the combat sports, but I just don't see one that is there. And it just seems like a bit more of a cash grab, which is a shame because it would be a hell of a fight in Europe. It doesn't have to be in England. It would be a hell of a fight in, I was about to say Ukraine. It wouldn't be a hell of a fight in Ukraine on there, but Germany potentially. They had a big combat sports culture with the Klitschko's, and obviously warmed to Ukrainian people because of how much the Klitschko brothers could sell out there. So I don't know what you guys think about that, but there's the second point you were saying about Fury and Joshua with Eddie Hearn. That's the biggest fight that boxing can offer. I disagree. I think Joshua Wilder would be. I think that would be bigger, and I think that has the potential to be a hell of a lot bigger. Fury, we're led to believe, can't get in the US at the moment. So again, that a Fury Joshua fight would probably go to Saudi Arabia. And if it was any going to be like what the Joshua Ruiz 2 fight was like, it just shouldn't be dead. A fight week like that shouldn't be dead. It should be, how magic was whether you like or dislike either of these guys, but the Fury Wilder trilogies, they were all amazing. Every fight was fucking incredible, and it was because you got these two guys that are literally. They're monsters, 6'7" to 6'9". Joshua is 6'6" as well. He'd be a monster with Wilder. So you've got these guys that are just like larger than life, literally, with great personalities. Joshua's not got as great a personality as Fury and Wilder, but that's a Vegas fight. I'd love to see that at the MGM Grand. Fury, they've done that loads. Wilder and Joshua. Regardless of what happens in this one, whether he wins or loses, a Wilder Joshua fight, I think, is bigger than Joshua and Fury, because Joshua and Fury would be big for the UK, but the UK wouldn't get the fight. It's sad. It would go to Saudi Arabia, but and it would probably resonate with a few hardcores, but not many. Just like I don't see that much buzz for Joshua Usyk in America. Whereas if you bring in Wilder and Joshua, I think that's a monster. You put that in Las Vegas, and you've got I don't know. I think that could sell a hell of a lot of pay-per-views, both on this side and in the UK.
I'd just like to pull you up on something there, Al. Sports washing. According to a good friend of yours, Mr. Rick Glazer, it's actually for tourism. Because somebody mentioned that today, and Rick corrected them. So I'd just like to correct you, Mr. Dawson.
I mean, I've responded to Rick quite a few times, and I follow him, and he follows me, and I don't mind disagreeing with people, and I'd welcome speaking to him on the phone. It's fine. He says things that I disagree with, and we've definitely got a completely different way of seeing how boxing should be run. I think Showtime is slick production, and I think they do boxing well with Premier Boxing Champions, and their schedule so far has had ups and downs, but it's had far more ups than it has downs. So PBC on Showtime fights, and this isn't a PBC on Showtime thing. I think ESPN and Top Rank and what ESPN do with USC, I think they're very slick. And but Rick is very anti PBC on Showtime. It's weird, Rick is very pro Daniel Kinahan. That to me is a bit weird, because he says about that he doesn't commit crimes against boxing, and there's a fucking shooting at a weigh-in, you maniac, in 2016. A boxer was literally shot at because whoever was behind the gun thought he was Daniel Kinahan in Marbella in Spain. But yeah, what that Rick Glazer tweet, I did think about responding, but then I've switched my mentality a little bit, thinking I'm just treating that as a parody account, because the way he phrased that tweet, he said one thing about this isn't sports washing, and then he defined sports washing by saying this is a tourism thing.
Have you haven't been blocked?
No,
not yet.
I haven't been blocked by I couldn't help myself but quote tweet Kugan Cassius recently as well, and he didn't block me, although he blocked other people that responded to the tweet. But yeah, I haven't been blocked by many people, I don't think. I need to work harder at being blocked.
Before we cross the finish line on this week's episode of The Last Round, Al, we touched on Tyson Fury really quickly. Is the retirement real, or are we waiting to see what happens in the Joshua Usyk fight, and Fury is going to make his decision after that?
I mean, I would say it's the latter, but I think the best thing for him to do would be for someone to remove his phone, because retiring can be an art form when it comes to, Floyd Mayweather made it a business, but he retired for years at a time, and it seemed like it was almost pretty much genuine, and you didn't know when he was going to come back, and you didn't know who he would even come back against. And that arguably adds to the pay-per-view sales, because how often is he really, if he's retired once or retired twice, is this really the last fight? We need to see this fight. It adds an urgency to that comeback. Is it a one-off, or is it going to be the start of a 6-fight run with Showtime or whatever? But with Tyson Fury, it's he was retired for 6 weeks, and it's not the first time he said about a bullshit retirement. I'm really over some of the things he says. I don't find it charming anymore. I find it quite I can't be arsed with it, and it's a shame, because what he did to Wilder was ridiculous. Tyson Fury's legacy is a bit weird, because his resume is actually quite thin, but the wins he's had, over the 2 wins over Wilder and the win over Klitschko, is amongst the very, very, very best we've seen in boxing for at least 15 years. Klitschko was literally at the top of his powers, and he completely bamboozled him, and Klitschko didn't know what to do. And I love Klitschko. I think he's a great champion, but Fury just bamboozled him. There's a beautiful word to say for it, because it was, I think, off memory, I'm sure it was a 120 to 108 fight. And what he did to Wilder was completely different. He stepped to the knockout puncher and knocked him out after that one draw and then 2 ridiculous up and down fights. Great legacy, but these sort of things he's saying, I'm really bored of them, and I think they're actually quite like I cringe when I see it, because it's just like, what are you really trying to say? What's really the point? If it's to like drum up interest, it's not drumming up my interest. It kind of even puts me off.
I think Ben Davison summed it up quite well when he did an interview. I think it was IFL TV. Is sometimes you can see that he's joking in an interview because you can see like the childish smile behind him. But at times when he says stuff, when he's, Ben was saying that he thinks he's bipolar, and he says certain things, and at that time, at that second, at that minute, he fully believes it. But it's because of the ups and downs that he has in his life due to, having bipolar. And then I think Chisora must have seen that interview, because then he said it when he was interviewed the other day, and they asked him about getting an offer from Tyson, and they offered him like $2 million to fight in December. And so, yeah, like you kind of touched on, he's very up and down, and, like donating money to the homeless, and then I'll come back for 500 million, and then actually I'll fight for free, and, stuff like that. It's just, you don't know whether he's coming or going.
I mean, the Chisora fight as well, that's like, I've got zero interest in, I wouldn't cover it. I really wouldn't cover it. I wouldn't watch it. I don't know how that would really resonate with an American publication. But if you were putting him in Joshua, it's a completely different story. Or even Joe Joyce or Usyk, these are legitimate fights and against legitimate opponents. For one reason or another, the Joshua fight would be more marketable, but I think Usyk would be by far the better challenge, and then Joe Joyce actually think could be a bit of a dark horse. But yeah, Chisora, it wouldn't even be on my list of potential opponents. No disrespect to Chisora, he's been a horse in this game for ages, but we don't need to see that fight for a third time.
I always wonder what Americans think when they look at Chisora and they see like the legion of fans that he has in the UK, and then people like, look at his boring ass fights, look at his resume, and then look at how many losses they've had. They're like, why the hell do you like this guy? Because he has had some terrible stinking fights, Al, like over the years. Remember when he used to like hardly train, and he went over to like Monaco, didn't even take his coach with him, ended up getting beat by like Agit Kabayel or something like that. He used to come in like super fat, and then for some reason we Brits just love him. I don't know why.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's an O2 Arena legend. He could literally sell that out by himself. One of my favorite Chisora stories is, this is really niche. I'll try and explain it for American audience and for Dan. But when he was, it must be going back like 15 years. He apparently had a business called Derek's Automotive Finchley Traders. So he's from Finchley, it's a neighbourhood in North London. But when you spell out that acronym, Derek's Automotive Finchley Traders, it spells out daft, and that's what was plastered all over his branding. And daft basically means idiot. For Americans, so he was like playing up to this like really weird way of selling, and they weren't even the cars you'd expect. For like, Eddie Hearn's got like a wheeling dealing not reputation, but like that's how kind of people see him. I think the cars that Derek was selling with that business were like high end, Bentleys. He was like spelling it out like, oh, I'm an idiot.
Oh man.
No, boy.
Well, Al, we always appreciate your time here on the last round. Obviously, before we let you go ahead and let our listeners where they can find all your stuff and how they can connect with you or follow your thoughts and opinions. Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, thanks. I always appreciate being on the show. I jump at the chance to come on again and again. You can find me at Alan Dawson Sport on Twitter. I've got an author page at Insider and Business Insider where I write primarily about boxing, MMA, and a little bit of pro wrestling now. Nice. I'm currently in Las Vegas. Moved here 6 months now, but I love it in Las Vegas. You can see me at fights. I'm always open to meeting people. And if you're ever in town, give me a shout, and we'll chop it up on a fight week. And I hope to chop it up with you too soon. Congratulations on the Manscaped sponsor. You deserve that and a lot more.
Where you going this weekend, Al? UFC?
I'm actually, the next event is actually tomorrow night. There's a decent, I actually quite like the concept. So Dana White's got this thing called the Contender Series, which is a separate entity to the UFC, but it's designed to funnel novice and regional talent to the UFC. So you get guys that are champions of like regional fight firms, or people who are, you know, lit up other sports like jiu-jitsu or wrestling. And the whole point is to impress Dana White enough that he gives you a contract there and then on the spot. Yeah. So and these are all at the Apex. I've only been here in Vegas 6 months, and already I'm sure the Apex is the venue I've been to the most for fights in my entire life, compared to like London, where like Wembley Arena is quite popular, which is about a 10,000, I think about maybe 8,000 capacity, and it's right next door to Wembley Stadium, which is 90,000 capacity. York Hall and the Copper Box are quite, and then O2. But yeah, even all of those combined, I've probably already been to the Apex more than that. So,
well, one last one. I know that Danny wants to leave, but how long have you been covering boxing now?
I would say like I first started in sports media in 2008, covering soccer. So I was covering the main soccer league in the UK, the Premier League, and then the Champions League, which is the one in Europe. But I kind of, because it was a football-only website, goal.com, which is where I started. Where I started out, I wanted to kind of venture out, so I started out my own blog, and it was called onthebeak.com. And the photographer I had was actually Stacey Verbeek, and she died a couple of weeks ago. It really took me by surprise. Have you ever seen some of the photos of Stacey that Stacey took? She was really big in like Texas boxing community. Now
it's clicking to me. She passed away a couple weeks ago.
She died. Yeah, I didn't even know she was unwell. But she was, you know, she was close with Errol Spence Jr. She would have been seen at the Maple Avenue Boxing Gym loads. Really, really big individual for, you know, Texas boxing. But if you remember, there was a photo of Floyd Mayweather and Victor Ortiz, and it looked like Floyd was kissing Ortiz's nose. She took that.
Wow. Yeah. I don't think I ever saw like what she looked like or anything, but I would always see her name as credits on photos.
Yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
Yes,
that's very unfortunate.
In 2010, 2011, I had that blog, and she and I were. I mean, I didn't pay her anything. I was just a blog I was working on in my free time. But yeah, so I started doing some stuff with her, and then I got a job at BT Sport. But I never really covered boxing full time for pay until 20. So I joined Insider in 2017, but I was covering all sports, mainly football, tennis, and then boxing. But then switched over to do it full time around 2019, so maybe 3 years full time. But I've been, you know, trying to get in the door, you know, for you know, for about 10 years and more than 10 years.
The reason I ask is if you just look at like how it's gone for like, especially the Brits, where like I remember watching it, they used to be in like small leisure centers. And like now you've got fights like, you know, the filling like Wembley Stadium, Spurs, and then obviously now over in Jeddah. So I was just wondering for you, like the transition of, you know, covering these things in like local leisure centers to like now, you know, filling up Spurs and Wembley. It must be crazy.
Yeah, I personally think the O2 Arena in London's amazing for fights. It's good location. Well, it was for me. I lived like within 10 minutes of it. Like the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, I thought was awful. It's like so far in North London that it's really hard to get back, especially because the train lines kind of close at like 1 o'clock in the morning. So if you're covering the press conference as well, you're screwed to get home. You're going to have to get like 3 night buses. But yes, I think like when you've got Joshua, Fury, they can sell out the stadiums. I'm sure there's going to be another one that comes through, but I don't know how strong British boxing really is once you get away from the bigger names. Like it just blows my mind that Joshua Taylor's not a big name, you know, or a big enough name to be able to set, you know, have a fight at the Edinburgh Castle, or to have a fight at one of the big Edinburgh football stadiums like Rangers or Celtic. Maybe that might be a bit of a you know, like a Catholic Protestant thing that might not want to go near, depending on which stadium you go to. But yeah, I think Joshua Taylor should get a bit more support from Britain, but I can't see it happening. But then, yeah, aside from those like bigger guys, I don't really know where British boxing. Like it's great they can sell out like the big arenas for the big fights, but those big fights are now going outside of Britain, and I don't know how much star making Matchroom is really doing at a local level anymore. I feel like they're kind of looking so much globally, especially with Australia. And what they're doing is, you know, they are definitely tapping up some talent in Australia. And obviously they're having a few big Vegas fights at the moment with Triple G and I think 3 weeks, and Canelo. They obviously had Canelo and Bivol earlier in the year. But I feel like maybe they, when you have one eye on the world, you can only have one eye on your home market. And I feel like that home market, they're kind of like now, whether they realize or not, maybe they're capitulated a little bit of it to Queensbury Promotions.
Right.
And Frank Warren. But again, like it's so hard to create a superstar in boxing. Anthony Joshua was already a superstar. I'm not sure Matchroom has really properly made one yet. Leonard Delaby's, you could have said, what's going to happen to Mayweather Promotions after Floyd retired, but they had Javante, they built Javante Davis into a legitimate attraction. Top Rank just do it again and again and again. It's amazing that they just have that recipe. And PBC kind of have it. But Wilder has a mad fan base. That's, he's a clear pay-per-view attraction. Obviously they've done it with Javante with the help of Mayweather Promotions, but I think the British boxing's in a curious place, because it's like, it looks really healthy and they're selling out big venues, but just curious what's going on at the local level to kind of keep those, big fights going for the next 5 years. Because if Joshua keeps losing, then I'm not really sure who else can really hold. And if Fury's legitimately retired, which I don't think he is, but if you remove those two guys, I'm curious who can then be built to take that throne. Yeah,
everybody always wants the throne, but it's hard to get to. I mean, we know it. We've seen over the years. It's just very difficult to get that star power and hold on to it and facilitate forward. It's definitely difficult. But before we sign off here, once again, thanks to Al Dawson of The Insider for joining us. Mike, go ahead and let them know where they can find us and follow us.
We are at The Last Round 12 on Instagram and Twitter, and be sure to join us next week. We'll be reviewing the big Usyk-AJ fight.
And don't forget to go to manscaped.com, check out their products. Use our code for 20% off, TLR Boxing. That's TLR Boxing for 20% off. So for our guest of the week in Al Dawson of The Insider, I'm Danny Z. For my co-host Michael Shepard, this is The Last Round.
Thanks for supporting and listening to the show. Follow us at The Last Round 12 on social media. Rate, review, and subscribe. This is The Last Round Podcast.